Hi guys, it's been a bit of a wild summer holidays this year. 2 weeks ago I was down at Rockfield Studios in Monmouthshire in South Wales, and this past weekend I've been down at a second recording studio in Liverpool working on tracks for my upcoming second EP. And that recording studio was chosen specifically because of its amazing history of recording some of the best British rock and roll bands of the past 30 years. The studio is called the Motor Museum, Liverpool, but some of you guys might recognise it by its older name, the Pink Museum. In the past, the 1975 have recorded there, Bring Me the Horizon have recorded there, Arctic Monkeys have recorded there, and the Pink Museum is also the place where Oasis both wrote and recorded their very first single, Supersonic. Right, I am now getting ready to set off about 2.5 hours south to record my second EP at what used to be the Pink Museum Studios in Liverpool. And I've got my listening sorted for the way down. This classic and this classic. Well, I'm here. I've made it. The building is no sign or anything, but that is it. That is the former Pink Museum Studios. It's now the Motor Museum. And the only reason I know it's there is because Rick's already inside and I gave him a ring. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you guys what it's like as you walk in, so you can basically see pretty much what Oasis saw when they came here to record Supersonic. So follow me. Glamorous, in we come. So you've got obviously toilets there, and through here is the main area. There's only one studio in the Motor Museum, and that's it. And this central little hut is one of the most famous parts of the studio, along with the porthole. So this is the way in. This is the main studio room here. And that is the vocal booth. Now, according to Bob, the sound engineer, this has always been the vocal room. So it's highly likely that this is also the room where Liam recorded his lead vocals for Supersonic and Noel recorded his vocals for Take Me Away. And now I'm recording the vocals for my second EP in exactly the same place. Now on the right of the main studio room we have the control room, and on the left we have the stone room. And the stone room has the famous porthole. Let's go have a look in the control room. And there he is, the mighty Bob. So that's the door I just came through. This is the control room, and this has always been the control room. So when you see Noel and Mark Coyle talking about the recording of Supersonic in the control room at the Pink Museum, that's right here.
We left here that night and listened to it in the car on the way home about 20 times. I was like, fucking hell man, that sounds mega.
On Thursday the 16th of December 1993, Oasis supported the Real People at the Crazy House in Liverpool. Tickets were just £4.50, and here's a picture of a ticket stub from that night. Starting the day after that gig, Oasis went into the Pink Museum studio for 4 days to get their debut single recorded.
Basically, when first was told about them by Tony Griffiths from The Real People, who kept telling us about his mates, this band called Oasis, and met them actually when they supported The Real People at the Crazy House and brought them down here because they'd booked in to do some B-sides.
I went to see them the night before they came in here. They were supporting The Real People in a club called the Crazy House in town. I was really impressed, you know. I thought, what a great, you know, almost rock and roll band, you know, because we hadn't seen anything like that for some time.
And this is Tony McCarroll's version of events. December 1993 saw us head for Liverpool's Pink Museum recording studio. We literally had a welcome party waiting for us. The Real People were in town. Even before we'd unpacked the instruments, the recreation had started. The Real People had a way of lifting a room. Their non-stop banter and lunatic behaviour left everyone in a good place. Chris Griffiths was already wrestling with one of his group, who had decided to steal the goldfish from the tank in reception. He had brought the little tank to our room then held it aloft and drank the unlucky little fish right down. I'm not making this up. Chris had tried to stop him, but was now holding the empty bowl out. All of a sudden, there was a hurl and a whoosh, and the kid threw everything back into the bowl. His stomach contents now swirled in the bowl as a very shaken-looking goldfish started to eat away at it. Chris looked at us apologetically before he returned the bowl back to the receptionist with the words, "I'll give him a bit of food, love." Now, when I was there, I intended to show you the reception and, if possible, the goldfish bowl. Neither are there anymore, unfortunately.
Well, they were booked in for 4 days, and I think it wasn't until the third evening that they, I think some of the Real people came down to have a listen to what they'd been doing, and sort of told them what they were doing wasn't very good, really. But
the idea was to do a track called "I Will Believe" and "Take Me Away," which was an acoustic thing. And we were having trouble with "I Will Believe." It just wasn't really coming together. I think we had 4 days or 3 days, I can't remember. But it was like we were up to the next but last day, and we didn't really have anything.
We were sent to Liverpool by Creation to do some demos, and for whatever reason, the stuff that we were doing, it wasn't really happening. Bring It On Down was going to be our first. Alan McGee wanted it to be our first single, and we come here to do that, and we couldn't get. Funnily enough, we couldn't get the drumming right.
Dave Scott says they were repeatedly trying to get "I Will Believe" right and failing, and Noel says they were repeatedly trying to get "Bring It On Down" right and failing. In the end, though, they abandoned the song, whichever one it was, and they realised they were running short on time. They only had 2 days left and nothing to show for it. So Noel went into the recording booth and recorded the B-side, "Take Me Away," just acoustically, and then overdubbed some slide guitar which was recorded on an Epiphone acoustic using a half pint glass.
So we thought, well, would "Take Me Away" will go down easily enough, so we just put that straight down acoustically, that one. That took about 15 minutes to do that one. That's ended up as track 2 on the Supersonic CD, the first single.
And then, in the studio, having spent 2 days and only recorded one acoustic song in a 15-minute space, they had to decide what to do next. And here's what happened. Tony McCarroll says, "I started running a sound check and practicing a lazy beat I had been working on. Bonehead quickly began nodding his head in tempo and began to play his rhythm guitar over my beat. The rhythm kicked in and I adjusted as Bonehead changed chords. Noel started to pick at his lead over the rhythm guitar while Liam rattled his tambourine. Gwigsy nodded his head in time, and soon Noel was humming a melody over the rhythm, but then called the jam to a halt as it was time to start recording. The door to the studio suddenly flew open and an incredulous Tony Griffiths burst in. 'What are you doing?' he asked. 'We're going to record Bring It On Down,' replied a surprised-looking Noel. However, Tony Griffiths replied, 'Our jam had the makings of a hit record.'
It's like, if we don't have something to give to the record company, there's going to be murder. So we were like, thought, do it, it's just erase what we've done and try something else. And Supersonic happened. It was like, it wasn't like it was actually already written. Noel just went in there and said, 'Tony, give me this beat.' He starts playing it. He starts jamming over it with his guitar, and then Bonehead, E, and they all banged in. It was just, and it just went on. And the song starts, and there's no actual finish in it. There's no actual changes in the drums or anything like that, because the drummer didn't actually know what it was a song. He was just playing this rhythm.
And so, knowing that they had to get their all-important debut single recorded, and that neither Bring It On Down nor I Will Believe were going to be that song, Noel Gallagher decided to write something completely new. And so, Noel went into what he calls the back room, and while the rest of the band were having takeaway, he began to write lyrics using their earlier jam as the basis for a new song.
Somebody said, "Well, why don't you just go and write one?"
What I remember from that day is Noel being really busy, sat in the corner, just sort of scribbling away and strumming and he was writing these lyrics, and which is what he did, you know. It's like, all right, Noel's doing that. Next thing is like, right in the room, come on, check this out.
Fucking hell, we're up against it here. We've not recorded anything. Why I chose to write a new song as opposed to record any of the others off Definitely Maybe, it's still a little bit of a mystery. I would play it through on acoustic guitar and everybody would I think Bonehead and Griggs would then start writing the chords down because I don't know what chords are. I just leant there and I just wrote the first things that came into my head.
Then over just went.
There you fucking go, Supersonic. Do that, change that, right? Press record, let's go. And we did it. And it was done in the day.
Noel sat down and in a very short amount of time wrote out all the lyrics to Supersonic, just talking about whatever was around him at the time. As is so often the case with Oasis, Noel claims that all the lyrics are just meaningless nonsense. However, whether by design or accident, there is always something there for us to dig out. Let's have a look. This sounds to me like a Noel original. It's defiant, it's determined, and it's not needy or insecure in the slightest.
I want to be myself, don't want to be no one else. There you go, statement of intent. Great attitude.
And for the first words on the first song from the first official release from the band, it was a massive statement of intent that stayed with them right the way to the top. Dave Scott explains these lines this way. Noel wanted a drink before he wrote the lyrics. He said whiskey gave him a bad head, beer was too heavy. I said that I'd just returned from France on the plane and had drunk gin and tonic there as there was no vodka. The effect of gin and tonic was really buzzy, almost speedy. So Noel got some gin and tonic from the off-licence, and that's where I'm feeling Supersonic, give me gin and tonic came from. And thanks to the Oasis Recording Info website for that information. Now this is obviously written to and about the real people who drove a Beamer at the time and were there with them in the studio.
And he has a BMW, can arrive with you and your BMW and stuff like that.
Tony McCarroll says this. Tony Griffiths guided Liam through the tune and provided backing vocals. The real people were having their effect again. They were producing us, as agreed. Now I know that Noel is the main songwriter for Oasis, but there were many instances like this where the band as a whole and the real people were integral to the composition of a song. Now this isn't just a reference to the Beatles album Revolver that Oasis were absolutely rinsing at the time. It's yet another reference to a vehicle. You've got multiple vehicle references in this song. You've got a submarine, you've got a BMW, you've got a train, you've got a helicopter. And if you look at the outside of the Motor Museum studios, you can see a stained glass window with a picture of an old vintage car. It's called the Motor Museum for a reason, and that was potentially his inspiration to start including all these vehicle references. I think this might be Noel talking about himself. According to Mark Coyle, Noel tends to sing what he really thinks rather than talk about it. And often Noel is unwilling to actually explain the meaning behind his songs. So the songs have meaning, but he's not going to tell you what those meanings are.
What is Noel Gallagher's new song about? It's about 4.5 minutes. I don't like talking about what my songs are about. You've got to work that out for yourself.
So I think this line is an early example of Noel saying, I'm not going to tell you the meaning behind my music. This line always makes me laugh because it sounds so like deep and meaningful, but it's not. It's like literally what was happening that second. He had to find a way to write these lyrics and he only had till tomorrow to do it. He had to finish this damn song as fast as possible because they were running out of time in the studio. Their studio time ended tomorrow, so he had to find a way to say what he wanted to say. That's it. So now I'm going to skip to the next verse and then we will come back afterwards to look at the chorus. You need to be yourself, you can't be no one else. It's the same as the first line of the first verse, just slightly adapted to make it apply to the listener. And this line, just like the first line, was a kind of a statement of intent from Noel, saying, we're going to be who we are and that's it. This is a kind of an invitation to the rest of the country, really, to say, come on the journey with us. Next, we have another example of Noel literally just writing about what was happening around him at the time.
Noel just sang words that came out of his head at the time. All of them were associated with the few days that he'd had in Liverpool. Elsa has a particular problem with flatulence. She stinks quite a bit. You know, I don't know if any other dogs are the same, but she seems particularly bad for it. They're audible, you know. Well, she was lying on the couch over there, and there was a brown stain on the couch near where the dog was lying, and Bona turned round and said, "Dave, your dog's followed through." Noel sort of thought the dog's been getting at the Alka-Seltzer in the cupboard. And that's where it came from. I mean, a lot of the lines in the song, like I say, were all related to things that were happening around at the time. I just put, "I know a girl called Elsa, she's into Alka-Seltzer." And that's where it came from, Elsa's backside, like.
Elsa was actually a big massive Rottweiler who farted terribly.
A fat dog, disgraceful farts all day long, sat under the desk, intimidating everyone in the room.
So we've got "She sniffed it through a cane," which is just a typical Oasis drugs reference. Then we have "On a Supersonic Train." It was just another vehicle reference, continuing the theme from BMW Yellow Submarine. It's just an exact parallel of the equivalent lines from verse 1, just slightly adapted to apply them to Elsa the dog. Then we've got "She done it with a doctor on a helicopter." Just another vehicle reference and a word that happens to rhyme, doctor. For those living outside the UK who might not know, The Big Issue is a kind of charity magazine that's sold by homeless people who are trying to find their way back into work. Now, when you step out of the main entrance to the Motor Museum studios, you are right into a main street in Liverpool. So it's quite possible that Noel had seen someone on the streets selling The Big Issue, or that in the area where he was writing the song, there were some magazines laid out, and one of them was A Big Issue. And that makes sense, because if we come up here, up into the chill out area, it's a bit of a mess, but you can see down there a big pile of magazines piled on an upturned table for some reason. And to be honest, judging by how almost all the lyrics have this kind of right here, right now feeling to them, he's just looked at something and written it down, looked at something else and written it down. I think it's quite possible there was a table there with a big issue on it and a box of tissues. Now, let's move on to the chorus. I think this is Noel talking about himself. I think the friend is him. He was always the member of the group who was slightly apart from the others. He was always the band member who felt separated from the others and couldn't communicate in a clear, unhindered way, only being able to express himself through songs.
Used to share that room with Noel. A bit of a stoner, a bit of a loner.
Always very quiet, Noel. Always in his room with a piece of paper and a pen, and he'd be writing.
He doesn't show these emotions, Noel. He never did. Apart from when you stick him behind the glass with a microphone, and then he can let this emotion loose that he's got.
I wonder if sometimes he felt like he was reaching out, but no one quite heard him properly. As if his efforts to connect were always silenced, as if by a wall of water. Now, I know I could be totally wrong here. I know what I'm saying here could be a load of bollocks, but as Noel himself says,
I suppose if we dig deep enough, they've all got interesting backstories to some degree, but I guess I'm too close to talk about it in depth.
We need to find out, because no one's going to tell us what he's on about. So, this is the place that Oasis's legendary first single was recorded. But just 2 tracks from this session actually made it onto the single. Those tracks were obviously Supersonic and Take Me Away. And of course, the fourth track is the Columbia white label demo that was recorded with the real people at their studio on their 8-track recorder. In the end, the version of I Will Believe that made it onto the Supersonic single was a live version taken from a BBC Radio 5 recording. However, out there somewhere there could still be some reel-to-reel tape recordings of Oasis attempting to get that song right in the studio. And if you're out there and you have those reel-to-reels, or you know someone who does, please let me know. I would love to hear them. This has just been part 1. Part 2 is coming very soon, which is going to be my cover of Supersonic, recorded and performed in the exact same space in which Noel Gallagher wrote it, the band performed it, and Liam sung it. Watch this space. Now that's very nearly the end, but before I wrap up, I need your opinion on something. As I've mentioned several times throughout the video, the main reason I went to the Motor Museum Studios was to record tracks for my second EP, and it needs a name. My first EP, the Good to Be Back EP, was named by you guys in a vote. That one hit number 7 in the UK physical singles charts, and I'm hoping to get this second one even higher if possible. A few months ago I began brainstorming names with members of the inner circle, meaning those who support this channel as paying members, and from that session I have selected 4 possible EP names, and I now want to put that out there to all of you guys and see what you think. Those names are Flying Through the Noise, which was suggested by Robert Hutchinson; Evolver, which was suggested by Modern Champion Music; Sleeping Giant, which was suggested by, I think it's Bradaz Travels; and We the People, which was suggested by Will Bainbridge. So please let me know which one you like the best in the comments below. I'm about to pack up and go home, but I've just noticed outside there is a hi-hat. So before I go home, there's one thing I need to do.